Hello, it's Mario here, and it's time for another quick motivational video. In this video, I wanted to cover something that I like to call the threshold illusion. It's basically an illusion that after a certain point, that there's some kind of threshold, that after you reach that point, you can call yourself quote-unquote successful in a certain area of whatever you're working on. So let's say if it's getting a six-pack, after you get a six-pack, you can tell yourself, well, now I am successful. I got this, now I got this. Now I can be happy. Now I can conquer the world because I got this. And similarly, the same illusion applies for business. Some guys, let's say, read that 4-hour work week from Tim Ferris, and they're like, okay, I just need to get it to that point where I just automate it. Once I automate that thing, it's gonna be like smooth sailing from then on. It's just gonna glide by itself. And funny enough, if you actually look at, let's take real life examples. What is Tim Ferris doing? He's hustling. He's working his ass every single day. And he actually wrote that book. What are guys who got the six-pack doing? Like, what are they doing? They're still eating healthy. They're still going to the gym. They're still taking care of their health. Because why? You know what happens if you don't do that? You keep going backwards. So the threshold illusion is that after a certain point, it's going to become ultimately very, very easy for you to do all of these things. You can be just automating things. It's just going to become effortless. While in reality, the life will just hit you from all different types of angles, and the better you are at a certain thing, actually the more it's going to require of your energy, and the more of your requires your willpower, of your attention, of your focus, and it just becomes harder and harder and harder. Of course, certain skill sets that you have will improve, but so will your ambition to do better work, and so will your ideas that ultimately will demand more of your effort. Because if I'm creating videos, at first, I could turn on the camera and start talking about random stuff. Right now, where's the science, bro? Where's the actual content that applies for a majority of people, that people can actually use immediately? And that's why making a video takes a lot of effort. So just turning on the camera and just start talking. And that's what I wanted to share here as well, because I see, let's say, a lot of guys that meet me in the street or something like that. They're like, they often say, oh man, just a couple extra thousand and you're gonna reach that threshold of like 50,000 subscribers or 100,000 subscribers. The same was when I was at 10,000 subscribers and just close to that. People are like, oh man, just a little bit more and you got it, as if something will change for me when I hit that number. When I hit that number of 100,000 subscribers, of 1 million subscribers, for me personally, what's gonna change is that I'm just gonna be doing more work. I'm just gonna be putting even more effort into it, right? And if I don't do more, at least I have to do the equal amount that I'm doing right now. And that's it, right? The threshold, the number itself, the number on the scale that you wake up, that you step on it, doesn't mean anything. You still have to do the same things you were doing before that number and after that number, and ultimately over time, of course, you're gonna improve, but it's never gonna be like no suffering. It's ultimately about choosing your suffering, and that's really what it is. If you choose two paths, even the one that it seems like there's no suffering, things like, let's say, I'm not gonna do anything, right? I'm just gonna chill out at home, watch Netflix, ignore the gym, ignore the healthy lifestyle. I'm gonna ignore everything. And do you think that path doesn't have suffering? Well, maybe not immediately, maybe not within the course of that couple of minutes, hours, or days, but if you really observe people who are living like that, you can see from their example that they're actually deeply suffering. And it's an internal suffering. It's a suffering of disappointment, it's a suffering of regret. Most likely in the future, it's gonna be even greater suffering from like diseases and things like that, while people on the other side of the spectrum, let's say, who are really, really working hard, who are super, super hustling and doing all these things, they're also suffering, right? You're suffering from actually putting in all that work and being beat up and getting like all that stress on you, then de-stressing, then coming back into it and all these things. And it really ultimately is, which one do you want to be, right? Which suffering are you going to pick? And I know it sounds a little bit negative and it sounds a little bit dark, but being a human being, that's your duty. That's what ultimately it is about. If you read a great book In general, on life perspective, Meditations from Marcus Aurelius, right? It was written almost more than 2,000 years ago or something like that. I mean, back in the Roman ages. And he was aware of this, right? People were aware of this, that ultimately as a human being, you have your own duty, you know, and it's like when a bee wakes up in the morning, she knows what she has to do. You know, the bee knows what she needs to do. And they just do the things they have to do. And just a human being that just wakes up in the morning and thinks whether this is something you should do or this is not something you should do. You know, it questions whether you should do or not. For most other creatures, and if not all other creatures, there's no question whether you should do something or not. You actually just do what you need to do. And that's one big part of the whole journey of fitness and health, is that if you're thinking that there's some kind of threshold, for example, that will define you as who you are or as a person who you're going to become, such as, now I'm finally the healthy person, now I'm finally that person that is happy, right? And if you're an unhappy person, an unsatisfied person with your abilities and with yourself coming into the journey, you're not going to be happy at any point of the journey, right? The person who is unhappy, that has 50 pounds to lose, will be just as unhappy when they lose that 50 pounds, because there's always going to be someone who has a better body. There's always going to be some next goal. There's always going to be the next step, the next threshold. And ultimately, it's just realizing that these thresholds don't change the fact that you actually have to put in the work and keep putting in the work. And it is only fair to think that that's how the system works. Because if you're putting in the work, you're getting the results. If you're not putting in the work, you're not getting the results. And the illusion of maintenance, of course, requires work again. And if you don't work, what's going to happen? It's either use it or lose it. That's how your brain works. If something is being used, it's going to be reinforced, it's going to be stronger, your neurons will be firing and wiring together and getting this skill to become super, super efficient. But if you're not using that skill, it's going to slowly start unwiring. Of course, it's going to be easier to rewire that skill. It's like riding a bicycle, but it is still going to take some effort. And there's no such thing as having everything just immediately just automated without any effort, right? And this is something I really fell into a lot that I wanted to share with you guys, as I thought, well, man, once I reach this threshold of like 50,000, 100,000, a million or something like that, there's going to be a point where I can just relax, you know. And of course, I mean, you can automate certain things and just relax, but I don't want to choose that suffering, right? I don't want to choose that type of suffering. I would rather more enjoy this type of suffering, quote unquote, where I'm actually creating value and adding more value and doing more and more and more as much as I can. I mean, I'm doing the best I can, right? It's not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but I try to do the best I can. And what really helped me to be able to surrender to that journey where I felt like I was not enough, or the goal, that the result that I was getting was never enough, was the fact that I just realized, well, look, if I'm doing the best I can, and ultimately if that's the result that I'm getting, that's what I can do in my control, right? That's everything I can do in my control. And this is a lot of people who message me, for example, with like building muscle, with getting a six-pack. And they're like, oh man, I just lost 10 pounds or 15 pounds or 20 pounds and I don't feel like I'm getting the result and I'm doing everything I can. Well, if you're truly doing everything you can, there's really nobody that can judge you, and you shouldn't be judging yourself. If you're really putting in the effort, if you're really putting in the 100% of your heart and your soul and your mind and your emotions and everything into that, if you're truly doing the best you can, given the circumstances that you currently have, that's ultimately all you can do. That is ultimately every single thing that you can do. If you're doing that, bro, like seriously, that's it, right? Don't worry about it. The result will come, right? You just have to kind of be able to surrender to that journey, which ultimately doesn't even have an end, right? The journey doesn't have an end. That's the whole point. That's really the point of this video. The journey doesn't have an end. There is no such thing as a threshold. And you just have to, if you want the results, you have to keep putting in work into it. If you don't want the results, you can put in work into something else that makes you more happy. And that is what I wanted to share with you guys. I know it's a little bit all over the place. It's not a very structured video. I just wanted to I guess, get this out of my mind to you guys on camera. It's gonna resonate with some of you guys, some of you probably not so much, so let me know in the comments below what you think. Aside from that, hit that subscribe button below if you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed the other videos, and if you check out the rest of the videos on the channel, you might find some value in terms of fitness, nutrition, and all the other things that I talk about, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.